Welcome to the first lecture on Shakespeare's Hamlet. I'm titling this Week 4 Hamlet Lecture 1 because the lecture before this was just an introduction to the period in general, Renaissance period, Elizabethan period, and Elizabethan drama, and then Shakespeare's plays as a whole, and then a little bit about Hamlet. So I'm going to jump right into a discussion of the play itself, and that's why I'm calling this lecture 1. I want to remind you of some of the themes of the play that I mentioned in the previous lecture, and the opening act really does introduce one of the most important elements of this tragedy, and that is the disjunction between appearance and reality, or between seeming and reality, or between falsehood and truth. This also gets picked up as a more complex dichotomy of the relationship between a play, a stagecraft, and reality. If you think about that as a problem, the problem of representation, the problem of putting on a play, it's a fiction, right? It's a falsehood. The things that we see are not true. No one believes them. As a number of critics have pointed out, if you believed what's happening on the stage, you'd stop it. You'd run over and stop it, but you realize it's a spectacle, it's a play. So how does it represent reality? How do plays represent reality if they're not real? So the play itself is a kind of figural representation that in some ways dramatizes the very problem of making sense of a world, right? We're only given appearances. We're given things, representations of the world through our own senses, and we're sometimes mistaken. So how do we know what's real and what's an appearance? Well, that's Hamlet's problem, or at least one of Hamlet's problems, perhaps. If you read Coleridge, I presented Coleridge's position. Hamlet doesn't seem to be a representation of the problem of doubt, but of an inability to act. So that this question of appearance and reality is raised at the very outset of the play. It's a typical theme dramatized in many of Shakespeare's plays. Othello is one of them. Iago tempts Othello and plays upon falsehoods. A number of other plays of Shakespeare's work in this way. But Hamlet, I think, is right in the center of this idea of appearance and reality. I want to talk about that as we move through. So Act 1, Scene 1 begins on the ramparts of the castle. There are sentinels at watch because the previous king, King Hamlet, our Hamlet's father, has defeated Fortinbras, and Fortinbras's descendant seeks the land that Hamlet has acquired back. And so the watch, the sentinels, are there concerned for an invasion. So this is the place where the action begins. And it begins when Bernardo relieves Francisco as the sentinel. And the first one of the first lines, line 3, "Long live the king," of course is an irony in many ways. This particular king, King Claudius, the successor of Hamlet, the older Hamlet, will not live long, and he's not been on the throne long, right? King Hamlet, the father, is newly dead, newly deceased. So the long live the king is a kind of irony in a way. Um, at any rate, they discuss uh, this appearance of an apparition. By the way, there immediately is the idea of appearance, right? This ghost seems to appear. Um, is it real? What's its status? Um, and is it merely a fantasy? Right, that's the word at 22, fantasy. And the ghost enters at line 38. Um, just as the bell beats one, uh, and Marcellus says, "Peace, break thee off. Look where it comes." Bernardo, in the same figure, like the king that's dead. Right? The language here is rough and coarse in a way, not poetic, which I think is important. If it was poetic, one might think it's fantasy. These are real men uh, who are on the lookout for real enemies, and they see a ghost. And Horatio, who we will see as Hamlet's friend, says this bodes some strange eruption to our state. At line 68, this bodes some strange eruption to our state. So the sense of just even the appearance of the thing uh, for this kind of perhaps superstitious, certainly credulous culture that believes in signs, believes in portents, right? Whether it's the king's ghost or not, for Horatio, he foresees that this prophesies some sort of trouble. The eruption to the state, right, means some cataclysmic disaster for Denmark. I've mentioned Beowulf in the previous lecture on Hamlet. There's got to be some interesting connection here because of the killing of kin, right? It's clear. There's no doubt Claudius has killed Hamlet to gain the throne. This sense of usurpation, this sense of something foul within the court, within the political structure is a theme from Beowulf that's picked up. I have no idea whether Shakespeare was consciously aware of this, but it does. Tolkien seems to suggest there's a whole tradition of this. So, be that as it may, it's an English poem set in Denmark. The English will come into play in some fairly major ways later on. But the tragedy is not within England. Is this in fact a commentary on England by Shakespeare? Hard to say. It's certainly a commentary on the rise and fall of states and the problems of political machinations within states. So at any rate, there's a whole history recounted here by Horatio of Danish political history involving Hamlet, involving King Hamlet, and there's no doubt this is meant to aggrandize and to praise the previous king. We get the sense of his greatness here. Horatio makes a claim about about the portent here of of terrible events coming. And so um, there's a commentary. There seems to be a commentary upon astrological speculations. Again, I mentioned a kind of superstition. Um, there's a. It's clear that Shakespeare plays like Romeo and Juliet, perhaps, and Macbeth and others, that Shakespeare capitalizes upon the belief that the stars do in fact affect us in some way, and may portend major revolutions, major changes in politics. Shakespeare would have accepted what Dante accepted, which is that the stars in some way explain the kinds of tendencies we're born with. That does not mean human beings do not have free will, freedom to act. I think Shakespeare stands in the middle of this with Dante, that the stars, whatever that means, we are born with certain tendencies that we must either curb if they're bad. We all have bad and good tendencies. Curb the bad ones, foster the good ones. Frequently, it's true that they're connected. So, if we have a bad temper, that means we might be courageous. How to fostering courage without fostering anger. So the ghostly apparitions, this ghostly apparition of Hamlet plays into these kind of middle of the road ideas that most even in the Renaissance people would have accepted. But again, the key point is that it does not preclude a belief in free will. So these are not determined events. Even if they're prophesied, they're not determined. And I think that's the kind of thing that Shakespeare is kind of capitalizing upon here in The Ghost. That being said, that's not the only reason for the ghost presented here. When the ghost makes its appearance to Hamlet later on in Act 1, we readily accept the reality of the ghost. It may be an appearance, but other people have seen it. So this immediately we don't discount when the ghost appears to Hamlet and starts talking to Hamlet later on in Act 1. We are set up to believe it. My man Coleridge, I think he got this idea from Shakespeare, from watching Shakespeare's plays and reading Shakespeare. Coleridge claimed that in any work of literature and in any work of drama, we engage in a willing suspension of disbelief. So we suspend our disbelief for the purposes of the play itself. So the symbolism of the ghost is what counts. Do we believe in ghosts? I don't know. There's tons of films that we might watch that we don't necessarily agree with the presuppositions of the plot, but we go along with it for the sake of the storyline. That's what we have to accept when we accept the ghost. I will suggest that there's even deeper ideas presented when we get to the representation of the ghost. There's a whole world of presuppositions that are accepted if you accept the reality of the ghost. Okay, So again, Act 1, Scene 1 introduces this idea of tendencies, built in, innate in human nature, but also not precluding the idea of free will, and the reality of the ghost. The ghost has been seen by others before he appears to Hamlet. Okay, so there's a suggestion of the reality of the ghost. All right, Act 1, Scene 2 presents immediately the conflict between Hamlet and King Claudius, right? And his opening speech is defensive. Obviously, there's been talk and about the early marriage of the king's widow, Gertrude, to her husband's brother Claudius, and despite the grief, they've resolved on a quick marriage. The gist of it, it's from 1 to 39. I'm not going to read it, but the gist of it, and this is where key words really are important in Shakespeare's plays. It seems to hinge on the word jointress. Now our queen, the imperial jointress to this warlike state. So she's a widow who holds a jointure, a lifetime right in property. So there's a kind of hinge, right? She's a kind of hinge or joint, a connection between the previous line and the present. And the word on line 20, or thinking by our late dear brother's death, our state to be disjoint and out of frame. The sense that there's something wrong, there's something disjointed about this marriage. And the pivot hanging on Gertrude being the jointress. That seems less like an argument than a confession. It's not Claudius claiming I have a right to this. It's I have a right because I married the widow of the previous king. There's something slightly almost confessional about this, but it's a statement of the problem too, of the marriage here. People must be talking. Right? It's a little odd for a widow to get married a month later, especially to the dead king's brother. Right? So Hamlet's response to the present king, King Claudius, calling Hamlet his son, is very interesting. Hamlet is a tremendous he's tremendously gifted with words. He's the wittiest. Everything is a play on words. He could spend books and books and books talking about his puns. And this is one of them. A little more than kin and less than kind. Right? He's a little more than kin. He's a little closer than kin. But less than kind. He doesn't think of Hamlet as a son. As a matter of fact, Hamlet is the rightful heir to the throne. And he's been supplanted. So the little more than kin and less than kind plays upon this idea, right? You're a little closer to the family. It's not kindly done. You mean some sort of harm to Hamlet. Hamlet senses that. So this starts a dialogue at lines 76 to 117. Um, and you know, the sense of appearance and reality, of exterior and interior, right? You're trying through external actions to see the interior motives. That's another way in which stagecraft plays upon this idea of appearance and reality. We get soliloquies that tell us what's happening inside characters' heads. They're very reliable, but actions are difficult to gauge. So you have to interpret the motives, exterior and interior, falsity and truth. Hamlet claims that he is truly grieving for his father's death, and Claudius and Gertrude are not. The king responds by calling Hamlet's grief a duty at line 88. You're being a dutiful son by maintaining grief, wearing the black, right? That raises the question: isn't that also a duty of Gertrude's, the mother, the wife? He also tries to calm Hamlet down. It's in the nature of things for fathers to die. The nature of things. The question is, did he die a natural death? He says that Hamlet's grief is unmanly, a will incorrect to heaven, calls his father's death necessary. It must be, right? Unmanly, incorrect to heaven, and a necessity. You see how the issue of free will and determinism has been invoked by Claudius here. These are specious arguments, of course, since Claudius actually killed him. It didn't have to be this way. It only is this way because it happened. So Hamlet's first soliloquy comes at 129. And he wishes to die. But we see the Christian elements of this, that he realizes that it's against God's law. Maybe I'll read this. 129. It's a famous soliloquy. I'll read it. It's on page 175 of the text. Oh, that this too sallied flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. So the desire to just dissolve and die, but the sad fact that God, the everlasting, has decreed that suicide is illicit. Oh God, God, how it's almost a prayer. So you see, Hamlet is a Christian, serious Christian. Oh God, God, how weary, stale, flat, and unprofitable seem to me all the uses of this world. Fie on it, ah, fie! 'Tis an unweeded garden that grows to seed. Things rank and gross, and nature possess it merely. There's the idea of nature. Nature is a natural thing, living and dying. Hamlet seems to suggest nature is born to die. That it should come thus. But 2 months dead, nay, not so much not to. So excellent a king that was to this Hyperion to a satyr. So Hyperion is a great figure, Greek god of the sun. That's Hamlet, Hamlet's father. And a satyr is a gross mingling of goat and human being, a figure of lust, a figure of unnatural desires. That's Claudius. so loving to my mother that he might not be teemed the winds of heaven, visit her face too roughly. He would shield her from winds. Heaven and earth must I remember. Why should she hang on him, as if increase of appetite had grown by what it fed on? He's basically calling this a base instinct, Gertrude going for Claudius. And yet within a month, let me not think on it, frailty, thy name is woman. Famous line. A little month. Or ever those shoes were old within which she followed my poor father's body, like Niobe, all tears. Why she, O God, a beast that once discourse of reason would have mourned longer. The animals mourn longer than his mother. Married with my uncle, my father's brother, but no more like my father than I to Hercules. Within a month, ere yet the salt of most unrighteous tears left flushing in her galled eyes, she married. O most wicked speed, to post with such dexterity to incestuous sheets. It is not, nor it cannot come to good, but break my heart, for I must hold my tongue. There's the link to Oedipus, right? This is kind of an incest. The marrying the brother of one's husband. One of the great soliloquies Hamlet has, many of them. I'll try to read as many as I can. I'll try to do as dramatic a reading as I can, and as I want to do, I'll comment. So poetic, highly poetic. You get the sense of a tremendous virtue with a tremendous, almost bestial vice. The scene ends with the talk between Hamlet, Horatio, Marcellus of Hamlet's mother's speedy marriage. Horatio tells of seeing the ghost, and Hamlet's final lines complete the previous disjunction between seeming and reality. This is at 253. My father's spirit in arms, all is not well. I doubt some foul play. Would the night were come, till then sit still, my soul. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth o'erwhelm them to men's eyes. Foul deeds will rise, though all the earth o'erwhelm them to men's eyes. So again, this sense of appearance and reality, these deeds will come out. These foul deeds of Claudius will come out despite the fact that appearance has hidden them from the sight of others. So Act 1, Scene 3 introduces Laertes and Ophelia. Ophelia is Hamlet's great love. And Laertes claims about Hamlet's love for Ophelia. It won't last. It might be real, but it won't last. That distinction between being real and not lasting is an interesting one. He distrusts Hamlet's will. So here's Hamlet's thought process isn't questionable, right? It's the will which seems faulty, inconstant. Perhaps he loves you now, and now no soil nor caudle doth besmirch the virtue of his will. But you must fear his greatness weighed, his will is not his own. So we have this idea of free will here again. If a will is not your own, can it be free? So he seems constrained. Laertes warns of Ophelia's loss of her chaste virtue at line 30. By the way, Laertes is Ophelia's brother. right? So he's giving brotherly advice here. So he gives a little account of the nature of love or desire. The word desire used at line 34. It's a danger. Fear it, he says. That word is used 4 times in 27 lines. Fear. Laertes has issues, I would assume, right? Perhaps he's been jilted, who knows? But this is an older brother giving brotherly advice. Don't trust this guy. His will is inconstant. Love itself is not reliable. She says she'll take the advice. A watchman to my heart, she says at 45. But warns Laertes of being a hypocrite. Perhaps another way of interpreting this is Laertes is just imposing his own falseness upon Hamlet. Is she being ironic? And she warns Laertes of himself being inconstant in love. So this is an interesting exchange. Enter Polonius the father, and the conversation hinges upon Ophelia's use of the term tenders at 98. Tenders. He hath, my lord, of late made many tenders of his affection to me. Tender, of course, is a form of tenderness, right? But tendering is to offer, right? And it has a kind of a suggestion, a meaning, a double meaning. Tender might be seen in the context of an exchange, an economic exchange. Is she aware of that? Unclear. But I think the tenderness might be there. The suggestion is that he's kind to her. Polonius picks up on this and suggests that the true pay, which are not sterling, right? Sterling is the metal, right? That would ensure the currency that's being exchanged. British sterling is still considered a term, I think, that uphold. It's like the gold. It's like gold. Gold upholds the money, right? One wonders, with all the money that's been printed by the federal government now at this point, whether there's obviously not enough gold to back it up. So what's it going to be worth? I don't know. So she's the suggestion here is his tenderness is false. It's not true sterling. And he also tries to undermine Hamlet's vows at 113. They are brokers. So while Ophelia probably used the word tenders as a form of exchange that is in terms of love, Polonius picks up on it and turns it all into an economic exchange. They are brokers, not of that dye which their investments show, but mere implorations of unholy suits, breathing like sanctified and pious bonds, the better to beguile. Hamlet's false. And Polonius forbids Ophelia to converse with Hamlet in words or talk. Strange. Let's see what the note says there. Words or talk. seem to be synonymous. The note says, but Polonius may mean to cover both direct face-to-face contact and indirect contact through letters and messages. Ophelia clearly believes that she has been told to repel Hamlet's letters. So don't communicate by word or by letter. So we see the situation. Polonius and Laertes are opposed to Hamlet's entreaties to Ophelia, who seems to love Hamlet. I don't think that's I don't think that's a seeming. She loves Hamlet. She believes Hamlet is true. I think Hamlet is true, which makes his treatment of her very horrific, just horrific. So the Act 1, Scene 4 between Hamlet, Horatian, Marcellus really deals with Hamlet's attack on the king at lines 13 to 38. One fault, he says, destroys a character. One gets the sense that the fault is one of lust. And he sets up an opposition of between Hamlet, his father, and Claudius. And the ghost then comes in and leads Hamlet out. It's a strange scene. And then the opposition here between the present king, his vice, and the dead king's virtue, clearly put in play here. So Act 1 ends with Hamlet and the ghost. The scene is interesting. The ghost's plight is to walk by night and by day burns in purgatory. If you know anything about theology, you'll know that this is a Catholic teaching that was rejected by the Reformation. So whatever you want to say about Shakespeare, the world here seems, the world itself, and even Hamlet, the world seems to be a Catholic world, because this is supposedly real, right? So it seems to suggest that purgatory is a real thing, at least for the sake of the play. Is Shakespeare telegraphing something? Unclear. What's the command? Revenge his foul and most unnatural murder, at line 25. Notice that links Claudius's claim that Hamlet's grief is unnatural. Well, yes, grief's unnatural. It confirms the unnaturalness of the grief. It's a supernatural grief. It's a grief that is righteous. So there's no doubt the word unnatural here is telegraphed, and links with Claudius's accusations against Hamlet. A fault to nature at line 102 in Act 1, Scene 2. Claudius also suggested that Hamlet's father died a natural death. So the denial here, no, it was unnatural. Right? So it suggests that he was killed. The ghost's emphasis on the murder as the most foul, strange, and unnatural at line 28 is important. He accuses Claudius of poisoning him, making it appear to be a venomous snake bite. And he accuses the queen of complicity. What motive? Lust. So to seduce one to his shameful lust, the will of my most seeming virtuous queen. Perhaps Claudius is much younger than Hamlet, and she misses the sexual relations. The ghost of Hamlet makes a distinction between virtue and lust at 53, line 53 to 57. By virtue, as it never will be moved, though lewdness court it in shape of heaven, so lust, though to a radiant angel linked, will sate itself in a celestial bed and prey on garbage. Virtue, as it never will be moved, though lewdness court it in a shape of heaven. So virtue, even though the appearance is beautiful, its lewdness will be seen. Notice the appearance and reality here. So lust, though to a radiant angel linked, though it looks beautiful, will sate itself on a celestial bed and prey on garbage. So the beautiful appearance underneath is actually vice-ridden and ugly. Again, appearance and reality, virtue and vice. So the ghost also emphasized the effect of death, that the king should die, that Claudius should be killed without confession. So Claudius will be damned to hell. Now, this mingles another aspect of Catholic religious devotion, right? The idea of the confessional that absolves sins. This is rejected as a false practice by the Reformation. So another Catholic element here that plays into it. Its application is horrible, right? You really want to be responsible for damning somebody to hell. While the suggestion here is a Catholic sacramental reality, its application is really horrible. It's not just vengeance on a temporal level. The ghost is implying a vengeance on a spiritual level to damn Claudius to hell. This is unmistakable, and creates a lot of the. Well, it does. We'll see it. It's a clear motive at one point when Hamlet has the opportunity to kill Claudius. And the ghost counsels Hamlet to leave the queen to her conscience. So Hamlet has the resolve to avenge the murder. Is this what his father has asked for? Well, it seems to be, right? It seems to be. Yes, from the this is Hamlet now. Thinking about what to do. Oh, all you host of heaven, O earth. This is at line 92. That's the last comment of the act. Oh. It's actually not the last lines of the act. It's the soliloquy after Hamlet's ghost leaves. Oh, all you host of heaven, O earth, what else? And shall I couple hell? O fie, hold my heart. And you, my sinews, grow not instant old, but bear me up swiftly. Remember thee? Ah, thou poor ghost, whilst memory holds a seat in this distracted globe. Remember thee. Yea, from the table of my memory I'll wipe away all trivial fond records, all saws of books, all forms, all pressures past that youth and observation copied there. And thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with baser matter. He's seeming to throw out all of the teachings that he's heard, perhaps those teachings of forgiveness, of Christianity. So again, there's no doubt that the elements of, remember what Tolkien said about how the elements of courtly political machinations from Beowulf wind up repeated in political situations over and over again. The Catholic, the Christian element here is being presented as a kind of backdrop for a revival of the idea of vengeance. So it seems to be that Hamlet is wiping all of that away. All saws of books, all forms, all pressures past that youth and observation copied there, and thy commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with baser matter. Yes, by heaven, O pernicious woman, O villain, villain, smiling, damned villain, my tables. Meet it is I set it down, that one may smile and be a villain. At least I am sure it may be so in Denmark. So, uncle, there you are. Now to my word, it is adieu, remember me. I've sworn it. Hamlet believes the ghost is real, it's not an appearance. He's going to throw out Christian belief, and he's going to perform this act of vengeance. Damn, not only kill him, but damn Clarice to hell. Hamlet keeps it quiet here. Swears by St. Patrick at line 135, who is associated with purgatory in England. St. Patrick, an Irish saint, a Catholic saint, clearly associated with Catholicism. There's one of Hamlet's most famous lines at 165, 166. Says, he speaks to Horatio. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. I think Horatio's philosophy is one of the senses. Seeing is believing. He's telling Horatio to don't trust your senses. Look beyond the senses. There's a reality beyond it. This allows the audience to accept the fiction of the ghost, who keeps saying swear, right? Who keeps asking for an oath of loyalty. So that's Act 1. This lecture has gone on almost 50 minutes, so I'm going to stop there, post it, and hopefully have another lecture right after this, maybe within 24 hours.